Major funding for this program is made possible by grants from Bank of America, Merrill Lynch, and Perfect Building Maintenance, New York Community Bank, Kilroy Architectural Windows, Inc., New York's Window Company, Capital One Bank, Greenberg Traurig, LLP. Additional funding for this program is made possible by grants from AVR Realty Company, LLC, BRIARWOOD Organization, BEECHWOOD Organization, C.B. Richard Ellis, Cushman & Wakefield, Dime Savings Bank of Williamsburg, Hal Fettner, Durst Fettner Residential, First American Title Insurance Company of New York, F.J. Siami Construction, Friedman LLP, Gemini Real Estate Advisors LLC, Investors Savings Bank, Jack Jaffa and Associates Real Estate Consultants, James D. Kuhn Real Estate Institute at Syracuse University, Madison Realty Capital, Massey Knakkel Realty Services, M&T Bank, Marcus and Millichap Real Estate Investment Services, Meridian Capital Group, The Moynihan Group, Margolin Weiner and Evans LLP, Newmark Knight Frank, Orphanides and Associates, SJP Properties, Sterling and Sterling Inc., Stonehenge Partners, Urban American, The Wickoff Group.
Hello, my name is Michael Stoller. People like to eat. They call it manja. They love eating. So I brought today guys who really eat, with the exception of Tony because he's too thin, but you know, people who really like eating, but who are the kings of restaurants. Many of them are even chefs. Some try to be chefs. Today, to tell us what's happening in the restaurant business in the tri-state region. My guest today is the incomparable David Burke of the Burke Restaurant Group, the famed restaurateur for years, Tony May of SD26 Restaurant and Bar, Wine and Bar, coming in from Yonkers, you know, a very small guy from Yonkers, Peter Xavier Kelly of the Xavier's Restaurant Group, and last but not least, our, you know, my co-host of the show, Drew, okay, of Myriad Restaurant Group. So I'm so happy to see you today. A couple pounds lighter.
Yes.
You told me next, if I bring you back, you'll be 60 pounds lighter next time over here.
I'm on Tony May's regimen. I want to look as good as Tony.
You should.
Not pasta for you.
No, I haven't. No, you're right. I can't eat pasta, not even gluten-free pasta.
No, okay. So, you know, what's going on? You said things are even getting brighter in the restaurant business.
Well,
with the exception of dealing with the landlords.
We're obviously restaurateurs and chef restaurateurs that are in New York City, and I think New York City.
No, please, he's not in New York City. He's
well, okay,
out of
so
it. He's Yonkers. He's Yonkers.
I consider that part of the.
But it comes up and
Westchester.
gets lost in Yonkers.
Well, but Peter's terrific, and his restaurants are of the quality that you would see in New York. That's why, you know, he's our colleague, and I consider that. But in terms of business, Michael, I think we're having a good year. 2010 has been good. You know, keeping in mind, I have Nobu, which is always off the charts. We just celebrated 20 years at Tribeca Grill. Cortone is doing well. So I'm very pleased. My Mexican restaurant, Cinco de Mayo, was our busiest day, thank God. So I'm very pleased with New York, and I have restaurants outside of New York. But how are you doing outside of New York?
I think we saw in March things started to break a little bit. I think it's coming back. You know, I feel like the suburban market didn't get hit as bad as the urban or downtown market.
You know, people don't know. You know, I got really two chefs. Two. You know, both of you could have been Iron Chefs, but he beat the Iron Chef. You know, we have to bring it out.
He crushed the Iron Chef.
He crushed the Iron Chef because he didn't know how to make a steak. But you know,
well, you know, he's the grill expert.
That's right.
The suburbs, Yonkers, Hudson County. Who are your customers over there? And I'm going to ask the question because you just took something over in Rumson. Who are the customers that you see, and what's the price? You know, what are you seeing?
I think that, you know, I've been at this since 1983. We opened our first restaurant. My clientele is is suburban based. They live in Westchester, Rockland. They eat in Tony's restaurants, Drew's restaurants,
the
David's
same
restaurants.
customer,
It's the
it's in
same
our
clientele, but
restaurants.
when they get to the country, the difference that for us as a suburban restaurant is that in the country they eat on their own dime. They're paying the bill, so they're a little bit more cost conscious, I think, than when they're in New York. But because a lot of the dining in New York, or to some degree, is expense account. Certainly at lunch and a good portion of it at dinner. We don't have the same. It's not the same in the country.
Now, your cost structure, the food is the same cost, but your occupancy costs are far less than your occupancy costs when you're running a New York City restaurant,
Maybe
right?
yes, maybe no.
Can be, depends on if you want to purchase the property. Then
Yeah.
you know.
Our cost in the suburbs is the same because we have we bought the property. So
But you have ownership.
We have ownership.
Hopefully,
so
it's
it's
going
a
to be an
nice
improvement
cost.
in equity, right?
Yeah, it's a nice
You
cost.
still have to survive.
Yeah.
The tough thing in the suburbs, depending on location, is that there's no business lunch, there's no tourism, there's no conventions, so you're feeding the same people every weekend, and you really you have to be a little bit better. I think it's harder in the suburbs.
You know, a couple months ago when I had Drew on the show, I said to him, you know, you live in Ridgewood, everything. You work in New York, but you live in Ridgewood, you have everything. Why don't you open up in New Jersey? And what was your comment?
They eat out on Fridays and Saturdays only.
How do you survive
you can't.
in a suburban restaurant? People go 7 days a week to Tony Mays. People go 7 days a week to his.
You
be
get
said.
creative. We close on Mondays in Rumson. It's the David Burke fromage. Tuesdays we were doing 10, 20 dinners. We created what we call Burger Night, which is now we went from 20.
Was that the $4 burger?
It's a $25 burger. It comes with a salad and a glass of wine, but and there's music, so it's a night out. Now we do 150 people on Tuesdays.
That's fantastic.
With a check average of $55 because of we took a dead night, the beginning of the week and made it another Friday night. And we did the same on Sundays by creating a brunch. So you got to get a little smarter out in the suburbs. You can't just wait for them to come. And And how- I had a restaurant in Portchester for a while, and we had people during the week, but they need a lot more attention than when you are in the city. I had
You mean you
people
buy 'em
coming in
after
when
dinner
we
drink?
first opened, and they would call me over and said, "Mr. May, we are so happy that you are here." He says, "But you better be here all the time and take very good care of me, otherwise I will not come back." I mean, they come right out and straight out and tell you. And obviously, it was, I could not stay there all the time, so I had to find a good manager, that would sort of extend the same courtesies to them as I would if I was there myself. It's not easy to find that person, no matter what you do. So I sort of tried to work it out. I was there for like 3 years, and then I just gave it away. I mean, I don't think I sold it. I think I just gave it away. I could not be in both places
Now
at the same
you
time.
recently opened up a new restaurant. How is it? And you opened up in a tough time. You opened up in September. How is the change? I mean, you're in the Madison Square Park area, which became a neighborhood. I mean, originally by 11 Madison, and the Shake Shack and other situations, and it's become more of a community. How do you see that?
Well, on Central Park South, the clientele there was strictly a destination restaurant because 59th Street, Central Park South, 40% of the inhabitants on that street, they're still on rent control. So you really did not have any local clientele. And for lunch, there wasn't that much for lunch either because people had to come from across the street. There is, it looks like, Columbus Circle is a small thing, but it's it's tough to come across. And people really don't want to do that. They like to come down from the office, get into a restaurant, come out and come right back up. So, it was not the greatest location for lunch business, and we did very well at night. That was our main thing. Moving from Central Park South to Madison Square Park has been quite an experience. I think that, first of all, you know, I would have even renewed my lease on Central Park South, but the landlord wanted so much money, increased the rent by so much, and I had to redo the restaurant anyway, because after 20 years in one location, you know, you really need to upgrade, you know, you need to move on. You know, you're in New York, you're not just in the suburbs, if you will.
Sure.
You know, but in New York City, you really need to renew yourself constantly, otherwise you're out of business before you know it. And so I had to redo the place anyway after 20 years that I had not touched it. And for what I wanted to do, the space was not suitable enough for me to do a contemporary restaurant where I could do a different menu that, you know, like I did at SD26. I wanted to do a different wine list like I did it at the new restaurant. And I wanted to have more private functions because I think that's you know, a key today to stay in business. So all the things that I wanted to do was difficult to do at Central Park South. And now we're doing that. We're doing very good business. As far as how is business right now, I don't know. I have no past. So everything that we are doing now is new.
No, but
we're doing pretty good.
But you know, you bring up a very interesting situation, which I believe all of you, I'm not sure if you're into this specifically, is the catering business. I know you have a catering business, and I know you have a catering business.
We're doing a party for 750 people at the MoMA.
So that's what I'm saying. So, but
we do a lot of off-premise.
But that's what I'm saying. So to aid your business, to change your business, to accommodate, you've gone into the outside catering business because that's able to, you know, move the David Burke, move the Peter Kelly, move the Tony May.
I think as sort of a hedge against, this economic recession we've been in. For us, at least, we've always had Events by Xavier's, our catering arm that we've done. A lot of the bigger, a lot of larger foundations that had been used to doing their events in Manhattan, whether at the Plaza, the Pierre, we have picked up a number of them at our Yonkers location because we came in at a much more reasonable rate than what they had been used to. And these are people that have been doing the same events for the last 10 years. We gave them a new style of event, and it was a great hedge for us against the recession. It helped us quite a bit.
But the economics today are very difficult. I remember when I first started, in the business, owning my own business. It was a lot easier to operate. Today, all eyes are on you from the customers who really, becoming a lot more difficult because of what they want value, they want environment, they want service, they want all the things that we would expect in a restaurant. But when it comes to pay, there is a resistance on price increase. So you got to have your ball in the air all the time. So catering is a fallback position, if you will, so that you need to have a diversification in your restaurant. So if one thing doesn't go, the other goes. If this thing doesn't go, the other one goes. We used to predict how much business we were going to do from day to day. We knew on Monday we were going to do so many covers, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. Today you cannot predict anymore. It's very unpredictable.
Here's a question with regard to the restaurant business. I mean, you were on Iron Chef. You've been on many shows this week. You were on ABC. How much has the Food Network, the Cooking Channel, which is coming out now, all this changed the restaurant business for you and in general?
I think the good news is that food, which has always been part of our culture, is now really front and center. And even in Las Vegas, where food was an afterthought, where they had buffets for $10.99. When Steve Wynn saw that gaming was flat and he had to find a new revenue source, guess what? He put 8 restaurants in the Bellagio, and now everyone has followed suit. So food restaurants, for instance, in Las Vegas, are as big an attraction as Siegfried and Roy. Now, the good news about...
Look what happened to Siegfried.
Well, we know what happened there. The weird thing is that you can destroy your career as easily as you can promote your restaurants if you're on TV. I mean, the perfect example for me is Gordon Ramsay. Maybe he makes a lot of money on TV, but screaming and yelling at people, his restaurants have all, internationally, Michael, been impacted. And then there's a strange disconnect that the people who watch these TV shows aren't necessarily our customers, especially in the high-end restaurants. They kind of like the divers, drive-ins, and dives. That's why Rachel Ray and what's the name of the guy from Divers?
But you know that the guys that go on television, you know, there's 10 of them. You know, I mean, they.
Hey, come on! Here's one of them over there.
Yeah,
you know, I was watching the other night, Chef versus City. I mean,
Yeah,
is
but
he
they
over at the
do well.
restaurant? I mean,
They do well.
it looks like he's on TV too
I
much.
think
Let him go to
TV
Zarellas with his love.
helps the cooks
He's right
and the
about that.
chefs that are on television that get the exposure. I think that's very good. I think that TV did a lot for a number of chefs. You know, from Wolfgang Puck to all the other guys.
I think that if you look at it, you know,
Emeril Lagasse, they've done very well. Their restaurants are always pretty much full because people
But
know
you know
them.
what? I think Drew is correct. I mean, the white tablecloth restaurant, the real ones. Okay, you know, a lot of people watch the Food Network. They watch HGTV. They watch, you know, the other maniac over there on the Travel Channel, who I happen to enjoy. But you know what? It's a different business. You know,
it is, and I think I think that's one of the reasons you see on a national level. There's I don't want to refer to it as a dumbing down of cuisines and restaurants, but there's been a casualization, and certainly Tony can speak to this, David, myself, Drew, of restaurants. One of the happiest things I saw this year from Sam Sifton at the New York Times was when he gave the review of La Grande Nuit, because I thought it brought fine dining back in and said, look, this is not a TV Food Network guy, and I think that, but you know, that the TV Food Network has done more for our industry than any single thing, because you take a guy like Emeril, and he got people interested in food. Now, whether you think he's a great chef or a bad chef or whatever, he certainly had success, and he knows how to get people motivated to get in the kitchen and do something. Same with Bobby Flay, same with a lot of the big names.
But you know, now you know, like what you did in Yonkers. I mean, Yonkers has been revitalized, and part of it was due to XO. I mean, this was a change.
But this is what happens in every community.
You know, Madison Square Park had some restaurants, but now SD, people know when they go down to Madison Square Park, there's SD 26.
Don't forget,
Tribeca.
You know, no. Tribeca, there's only one. There's a guy who started in Tribeca. Yeah. He's still the king at Tribeca, and you know, eat downtown. That's all he says on his cell phone. But
culture, you know, New York. It's funny to hear Tony May say that 59th Street's a destination. Yeah. I mean, Tribeca's the destination. Tony, you could all
But I think
points
Drew,
are at 59th Street, including Donald Trump across the street.
But what's true about this, because I used to work in the Time Warner Center, people in the Time Warner Center over there, they don't want to cross over at lunchtime. That's the reality. You know,
I had a restaurant in the Plaza, and because you're next to the park, there's nobody working or living in the park that's coming in to eat. So you know, and it's not about the view. So it's really not the best location. The best location is to be surrounded by high rises.
Have you been in the Plaza recently? With everything is downstairs. It's like Trump Tower. It's a failure, and it's never going to be anything better.
Yeah, but the restaurants are packed there. The Oak Room.
No. Downstairs, we're talking about
the food. The
Todd English is
all food. All food is is the largest grossing.
No, the whole food.
We're talking Time Warner.
We're not talking about Time Warner. We're talking about the Plaza. The Plaza.
Michael, the one thing, and from a real estate idea, we really, restaurants in New York especially, have gentrified.
Absolutely.
Desolate areas. Look at the Lower East Side now. When I was a kid growing up, it was dangerous to go avenues A, B, and C. All these little restaurants. It's the rest at Tribeca.
But still dangerous if you're not sporting a tattoo and a piercing.
Wait a second. He has two of them.
You know, I think one point I wanted to bring up, because when Tony was talking and Peter was talking about their restaurants out of New York, you have to have the personal touch, because you know I've been very loyal to Peter's restaurants. My in-laws live in Nyack, but he's on top of everything. There's always a presence. Whereas there are a lot of restaurants that are very transient, where you come in and you're anonymous. It doesn't matter how many times you go. One of which is the Cheesecake Factory. Look at the way it operates. they don't take reservations. So they don't even know when you're coming in. They can't even prepare a table, special table, table vacant, whatever configuration. So there are a mass audience that do want an anonymous dining experience at a very low average check. What we provide is as high a quality in food and service, and that's not, you know, something that you just walk into. It is destination.
But you know what?
You have to know that you're making plans to go to your restaurant.
You know, Drew, when I was at David's place at Foxwoods, you know, it was like being at David Burke in the city. I mean, it had the same feeling. Your people were there. The food is of the quality. You know, it's the same thing that people talk about your place. I mean, this is what you've permeated and you're taking around. How's the Bloomingdale's do? I mean, that's a different unique.
Well, it's a different type of food for me, too. It's a low check average. It's more of a fast casual concept. It's sandwiches, it's delivery, there's a cafeteria section and a small petite cafe section, and it's mainly lunch driven. So the check average is $20. So what we can do for $20 versus what we do for $100 is different. But from a quality standpoint of food, it's the same thinking. Buy good stuff, prepare it correctly, season it, keep it clean, and make it fresh. From a service standpoint, it's a little different because the wait staff there is working on $20 checks on $100, so they're in a different league from a compensation standpoint. So you're getting a different type of waiter. So you're not going to get the service you're getting at Courtauld and SD26 or one of my other restaurants or Peter's. You're not getting that polished service. But again, it's a quick lunch hit.
Now, how is it dealing? You know, people say we're out of the recession. I don't believe we're out of the recession. How is it today if you were looking for a new land, if you were going to your landlord, like you were talking about the bakery before, or trying to deal with the landlord? Are they becoming more willing? Do they realize that you can help a building because you're there within the facility?
I think that certain landlords are willing to compensate some rent and throw in some TI if you're the right guy, and they think you have a track record of paying your bills on time over 10, 15 years. Some. Other ones don't want to hear it.
Well, landlords are just like any other businessman. They try and get as much as they can out of their properties. There is nothing wrong with that. And, you know, we have to try and do our best to make the deal, the best deal that we can for the operation we're going to do. If something happens, something doesn't work out, then you have to be intelligent enough to be very honest with them, sit down and discuss the problem and go on. We have all gone through this in our career, I think, into different restaurants. And that was one time I was having some problems at San Domenico on Central Park South. Now, I sat down with the landlord. I said, look, you know, I can't pay you the rent right now. However, if you give me a few months, I will give it back to you, and I will give it back to you with interest. And so otherwise, if I go out of business, we both lose.
How hard is it today?
So let's work it together.
You know,
work it out.
I think I posed this question before. How hard is it today for a young, new chef to go into business?
Impossible. Well, without the backing of serious financial backing. This is how difficult it is, I think. I also think that's one of the reasons we're seeing some migration to the suburbs by
and
name chefs. And Brooklyn.
I mean, depending
Brooklyn
on
got settled by
location.
people who just are priced out of New York.
Yeah, and I think there's people that are more ambitious at a younger age that want to own their own companies.
Wait a second, he was a young age? All you guys...
Different time. It was a different time.
I opened my first restaurant 25 years ago, Michael. There's a movie called Eat This New York, and it's about these young guys who are opening a restaurant in Brooklyn. At the time they made this movie, the concept of the movie was then speak to the experts. You know, I didn't necessarily, but they spoke to Danny Meyer, Keith McNally, John George Drew, whatever. I think about that movie now. Truthfully, it was way ahead of its time because Brooklyn really has come of age now. It's its own restaurant community. Right. But back then, when you watch this documentary, it's such a torturous process for these guys, and they lose all their money, and they're fighting with each other, and so and that was when you could do it. Yeah. Today, it's got to be $1 million. I don't care where you are, right?
Yeah, it's got to be very interesting.
Even a renovation job.
That's what I'm saying.
A couple of weeks ago, I did a show on what's happening in Brooklyn, and I will tell you, I mean, and it's a question if you have the nerve to do it. They just built 2,000 brand new rental units in downtown Brooklyn. In downtown Brooklyn, where the only thing that's there today is juniors. I mean, Gage and Tolan is no longer there.
Closed, yeah.
Abe, you know, Applebee's is there. You know, but these people are the young people who are making a living, who wanted to move there because they have nice new apartments. But there's nothing on Fulton Street. There's nothing on DeKalb Avenue. But you got 2,000 people. And you know, they're living there.
They got to go to Atlantic Avenue.
They got to go to Atlantic Avenue to find something, and that's the only place. But, you know, so there are certain opportunities. You know, there's a question. I mean, look, you're in the stadium, you're in Citi Field, you know, there are different migrations over there, you know, maybe in Barclays Center, maybe in the new stadium, you know, when they open up the Nets Center, maybe there'll be fine restaurants over there.
There will be.
Yeah.
But Brooklyn has always had a tremendous amount of people who used to come to the city to eat. Now, you know, there is some very good restaurants where they can go to, fairly informal.
Nothing wrong. Parkside is still owned by Italians, okay? You know,
There were two restaurants. No, but
River Cafe was the
Peter
only
Luger's and River Cafe. That was it. Let's be honest. And when David cooked at the River Cafe, that's when they really earned the reputation. But I think the real estate aspect is just that's the. Tony has the best attitude towards it. Like, you know, he got up and he moved. But how many years were you at San Domenico in that location?
20 years.
So the landlord at one point was willing to work with you, but obviously at the end of the day, they felt confident they were going to get somebody else to replace you.
I think,
and you were there for 20 years. You built the location.
I think part of the toughest thing for a new person, or even you guys to open up a restaurant, is the cost of dealing with a landlord, lease, TI improvements. And the second thing is knowing as a banker, banks don't like lending to people like you.
Especially,
you know, it's you risk, you make a hotel look good.
Well, because the margins are so low. You know, I mean, that's, you know, I feel much more fortunate because I had an opportunity to purchase and own the real estate, because, you know, you're in a business that's got very low profit margins. If you're very good at what you do, you know, you're something over 10%. If you're not very good at what you do, you're something under 10%. And that's the reality of it. I mean, you know, and I'm talking about even some major players. I mean, that's where they are. So this is not a business that throws off a lot of profits. So it's hard to walk away, you know, as a, you know, you run a marginal business, and then at the end of the lease, you have to just walk away and give it back.
I wish we can talk more, but hopefully in the new season, you'll all come back. But I'm really happy that I've assembled, or should I say Drew assembled for me, my executive producer, such a great group.
My esteemed colleagues.
My esteemed colleagues, the James Beards of the world, okay? David Burke, Tony May, Peter Kelly, and of course Drew. See you next week.
Major funding for this program is made possible by grants from Bank of America, Merrill Lynch, and Perfect Building Maintenance, New York Community Bank, Kilroy Architectural Windows, Inc., New York's Window Company, Capital One Bank, Greenberg Traurig, LLP. Additional funding for this program is made possible by grants from AVR Realty Company, LLC, Briarwood Organization, Beechwood Organization, C.B. Richard Ellis, Cushman & Wakefield, Dime Savings Bank of Williamsburg, Hal Fettner, Durst Fettner Residential, First American Title Insurance Company of New York, F.J. Siami Construction, Friedman LLP, Gemini Real Estate Advisors LLC, Investors Savings Bank, Jack Jaffa & Associates Real Estate Consultants, James D. Kuhn Real Estate Institute at Syracuse University, Madison Realty Capital, Massey Knackel Realty Services, M&T Bank, Marcus & MILLICHAP Real Estate Investment Services, Meridian Capital Group, The Moynihan Group, Margolin Weiner & Evans LLP, Newmark Knight Frank, Orphanides & Associates, SJP Properties, Sterling & Sterling Inc., Stonehenge Partners, Urban American, The Wickoff Group.